This is best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, artist and colorist on Batman: The Adventures Continue. And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Hey everybody, welcome to the DCAU Review bonus episode, our latest edition covering the Batman: The Adventures Continue tie-in comic book. Liam, boy, our DCAU cup just runneth over this week. So much DCAU content, so many new comics. Is your voice all right? Do you need some something to gargle with to help it out?
We're doing our best. Excuse me. No, we're doing all right. But yes, this is quite a bit to handle in 1 week, along with our regular episode where we're covering Superman the Animated Series all month long. And we certainly invite you to check out that episode as well. We had a lot of fun reviewing that. But yes, to more pressing matters at hand, this is our second DCAU tie-in comic bonus episode review of the week. Of course, along with our review of Justice League Infinity, which you can hear. Be sure to check that out. The first issue of that series dropped this week. I had a lot of fun talking about that with you. And then, of course, we also have today, as you mentioned, Cal, Batman: The Adventures Continue, Season 2, Issue 2, as we, at least for the time being, get a somewhat of a conclusion to this very dramatic Court of Owls DCAU introduction.
That's right. We are covering a Court Fight Part 2. So if you have not read the issue yet, I don't know why you're listening to this episode. Even if you do listen to it, we advise you, if you have a couple dollars, go ahead, either buy the digital version or go to your local comic shop, even better, and purchase a physical copy or two of this, because your dollar signs, honestly, are going to tell DC and the powers that be over there that you want more of this to continue next year and beyond, hopefully, or later this year, hopefully. So before we get into our review this week, though, Liam, some serious matters. The artist on this that so beautifully draws this comic and is really probably the main artist when it comes to Batman the Animated Series tie-in comics. He's done everything from Batman Adventures to Batman Gotham Adventures, and probably some work on the Lost Years also, and pretty much everything in between. Lots of artwork in the DCAU from this gentleman, Mr. Ty Templeton. Just an absolute legend, just a very kind person. He's been very kind to us on this program. And unfortunately, he announced this past within the last couple of weeks on his own social media that he was diagnosed with cancer, and he released it he drew a little comic and released it on his social media. So if you don't follow him, check him out at ty Templeton, Templton, and you can check it out. But it appears, unfortunately, that cancer, which, you know, what else is there to say about cancer? But it's bad enough in this case where he's going to have to take some time away from his artwork. He mentioned that it had actually affected some of his deadlines, perhaps in the original first season. So we want to wish Mr. Templeton certainly thoughts and prayers for him and a speedy recovery, and certainly have appreciated his artwork, not only throughout the years, but everything that he's done thus far on Batman: The Adventures Continue. It really makes this feel familiar, like home, and like you're picking up either, even if you don't think that this is a continuation of the actual things that you watched on television, it feels one-to-one a continuation of everything that we've read tie-in comic wise. And he really does a lot to add to this to these stories that he's been handed.
Absolutely. Can't say enough good things about him as an artist, as I also did quite a bit of work as a writer on a lot of these various tie-in comics, and by all accounts, again, we've been able to interact with him, social media, mostly bad, but not all bad, as we like to say here occasionally. And we've gotten to have some interactions with Mr. Templeton, and he's always been very kind to us, and just seems like by all accounts a great man, and obviously that's a tough pill to swallow for anyone, and certainly someone as young as Mr. Templeton is, and I would definitely encourage you to check out the little web comic that he posted where he speaks in more detail about the type and what he's doing and the treatments and all of that. So it's a very sort of a little bit of black humor, I guess, in doing it in a announcing something so serious in a comic strip about a bunny. But he kind of walked that line and does a very good job of explaining sort of his thought process and everything going forward. So before we got started on the actual review, we of course had to send our best wishes and our prayers to Mr. Templeton and his entire family as they go through this. Much love and respect to him.
Absolutely not an easy task, a Herculean task always, but we're hoping and praying for the best, and hopefully we'll come out on the other side and continue to enjoy his artwork and him as a human being for many years to come. But Liam, I guess we can, now that we've talked about that, we will uneasily transition into talking about his artwork this week, and certainly the story written by Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, as we kind of pick up where things left off with Court Fight Part 1. And if you recall, you and I sort of talked about what our hopes would look like for what the story at the end of our last episode, and kind of what we had hoped to see. And one of the things that we had hoped for was that this Court of Owls story was maybe an overarching storyline that would be told throughout the entire series in the same way, maybe in the same vein as the Jason Todd storyline sort of was the main overarching story in the midst of all these little tiny interruptions with Deathstroke and Mr. Freeze and Azrael. And well, we didn't quite get our wish as we learned this week.
Yeah, so this at least for now seems to be the end of this storyline. We get a pretty definitive ending, it would seem. But yeah, there's still quite a bit to talk about here as we sort of, as you mentioned, pick up where we left off. Batman's still wearing the magical gem on his head that allows him to see and communicate with Deadman in the Batcave. As they sort of he's sort of looking over one of the gloves, the talons, if you will, of the Talon in the Batcave, and we actually get Robin and Nightwing entering and seeing what appears to be Batman talking to himself. Eventually, Deadman possesses Alfred, and there's a pretty humorous scene of him sort of reuniting with Dick Grayson, as we talked about in our review of season 2, issue 1. We've established, and there's sort of some light references to potentially some Ty Templeton tie-in comics of yesteryear, with Batman and Robin Adventures and Batman Gotham Adventures. There's some references that Dick Grayson and Boston Brand knew each other before before Dick became Nightwing and before Boston Brand became this ghostly dead man. So we get a pretty fun sequence to open us up. But the fun can't last forever there, as Alfred sort of quickly reminds Master Bruce that he is due to attend Mayor Hill's funeral.
Yep, that's right. He is. But before we actually take him there, we get a quick cutscene to one of the court's members, fully dressed in a hood, wearing a owl mask, the classic owl mask that you might have seen previously in Scott Snyder's run back in the new 52, looking very similar to that mask from the Court of Owls. And he is meeting up with the Talon that we were introduced to last week. And they talk about that Batman is on their trail, and also happen to mention that Deadman is also involved, and they're aware of that. But he takes this Talon into a mausoleum, I guess, perhaps, inside this building. And there are numerous rotting corpses sitting on tables. And wouldn't you know it, the equipment that this Talon is delivered is hooked up to the bodies, and they began reanimating. And it appears that Talon himself will not be alone for very long, at least.
Yeah, and that's sort of juxtaposed with, as you mentioned, this special formula being injected into this zombie Court of Owl's army, as we see just legions of what appear to be just decomposed bodies on different gurneys, sort of throughout this room that the leader is in. And we sort of cut back at the same time to Batman still examining this glove that he got off of the Talon, and he and Deadman are sort of arguing back and forth of Batman's not quite sure that it is zombies, but Boston Brand is quite sure, which sort of explains why he was not able to possess the Talon when he tried, as the Talon is perhaps already dead. And so as they continue to have this dialogue, as we previously mentioned, Alfred sort of interrupts to let Batman know that he is due to be at Mayor Hill's funeral. And we sort of go from there to a little bit of Bruce Wayne watching a eulogy take place. And of course, Deadman had to tag along and inhabits the body of okay, it's the deceased sister. It's Mary Hill's sister. Okay. And as luck would have it, Deadman tags along and happens to possess the body of Mary Hill's sister to sort of continue the dialogue with Bruce.
Yeah, it's interesting. Deadman has more fun, and Bruce is having none of his shenanigans, as they are at a very serious funeral. But Boston happens to mention that he's overheard some gossip. We're not sure where he's been hearing the gossip, but that Mayor Hill's son, Hamilton Hill Jr., is in fact been lobbying the city council to replace Mayor Hill, and has been doing so nearly immediately. This, of course, beginning to point out perhaps that Hamilton Hill Jr. had some interest in seeing Mayor Hill go. And so Deadman leaves the funeral at Bruce's behest, because he's acting out. And so he begins, and he happens to observe at the same time some people that are watching the funeral. Deadman, hot in pursuit, comes after them, and wouldn't you know it, they end up in a church. And inside the church, he comes face to face with one of the Court of Owls. But wouldn't you know it, the Court of Owls this member of the Court of Owls can actually see the dead man. He has no issues with seeing him. And at that point, he drops this somewhat formed Talon group onto the dead man to begin attacking him. And I guess we learned that they are able to all Talons are able to physically interact with the ghost, and they begin fighting the dead man. But wouldn't you know it, here to save the day, complete with the amulet on his head, it is Batman.
Yeah, we sort of find out that not only is he not able to possess these sort of undead creatures, these Talons, but that any sort of contact with them actually harms him a great deal, and they begin to overwhelm him, as you mentioned. And Batman is quick to point out that because they're already dead, he doesn't have to hold out, and then that's illustrated by him immediately blowing them up. So we gotta, and we'll certainly talk about more of this section in visuals, and when we talk about the great art. But yeah. This time, Batman notes that there's a little bit more evidence left behind, as one of the Talon's fingers is left behind, and he's able to do more testing. But before we get to the results of that test, we have yet another scene sort of really just tacking on the suspense of whether or not Hamilton Hill Jr. is truly the mastermind, as he has a conversation with Mayor Hill's wife, his mother, about how basically they're just sort of having there's some talk of embezzlement, there's some talk of his political aspirations, and Mr. Junior has some words for his mother as they sort of begin to apparently enter into some sort of political family power play that may or may not be resolved by the end of this issue.
Yeah, we may or may not. And there's a cliffhanger, of course, as we just before we cut to the next scene, there is an appearance of one of the Talon zombies sneaking out of the shadows right behind Hamilton Hill Jr. So leading at that point to maybe suspect that, maybe while not the most upstanding citizen, maybe Hamilton Hill Jr. isn't a part of this Court of Howls. So we get more scenery of Batman and Deadman conversing as Batman does some testing, attempting to figure out the origins of what's happening there. There is an interesting dialogue that talks that Boston Brand or the Deadman has with Batman about why he hasn't left Earth's planes just yet. And Deadman remarks that he's worried that he hasn't done enough good, that when he reaches the pearly gates that he'll be allowed in. So there continues to be some dialogue, and Batman is continuing to question where all of the Talons are, and and Deadman makes a joke saying that maybe they were all hanging out together at City Hall. And Batman says, well, the Owls were formed during the construction of the old City Hall, and they were tearing it down to make it, which would make it a perfect spot for where they could be hanging out.
That's right. Yeah, I do really like that scene of Batman and Deadman sort of commiserating over not quite knowing when it's enough, when they've done enough good, that they and in Deadman's case, his sort of he sort of tasked with avenge or with doing good deeds by this cosmic force, whereas Batman's of course beholden to this vow that he made. So interesting to see how they sort of are two halves of the same coin, despite being as diametrically opposed as at least from a physical standpoint as two characters could be. But that sort of them sort of finding that commiseration there, I think that's a pretty fun bit. But yes, from there we do cut to the soon to be demolished old City Hall building, where Hamilton Hill Jr. is brought before the leader of the Court of Owls. And spoiler alert, can't imagine why you'd be listening to this if you care about spoilers for this, but hey, I'll just say that now. Spoiler alert, we get the reveal of the leader of the Court of Owls, and that is, of course, it is Hamilton Hill Sr., Mayor Hill himself, has been revealed as the leader of this version of the Court of Owls.
Looking a lot younger, a lot more spry, with some darkened hair. I thought for sure there was going to be some involvement of a Lazarus pit or something that would explain how not only was he still alive, but also is now younger. But nope. We find out that the process that reanimated the other Court of Owls, Talons, also were applied. Well, we don't get we at least don't get a reveal that it could or was anything to do with the Lazarus pit. Let me say that they could be changed later on, but so it appears that not only did it reanimate him, but it also modified him and allowed him to now experience what he says is eternal life, and he's the last great medical achievement of the Court of Owls. Hamilton Hill Jr. immediately wants to know how this could be, and we cut to a scene. If you remember in the first issue, Veronica Vreeland, General Vreeland, mentioned that there was a journal that contained a code and some other things that had been stolen from his collection during one of Veronica's parties. And so Hamilton Hill Sr., Mayor Hill, recounts the tale of how he snatched the book and was able to figure out or knew at that point that he wanted to reclaim the legacy of the Hills, which their names happened to be written in that book. So he stole it, and he said it took some time, but eventually the ancient text revealed all of the secrets to him. And he at that point sort of invites Hamilton Hill Jr. to join him, but in a very Star Wars-esque reveal and homage, Hamilton Hill Jr. Wants nothing to do with it, and that's when Hamilton Hill Sr. decides that, well, if you're not with me, you're against me, and decides to pull the plug on old Hamilton Hill Jr. at that point.
Yeah, we really go 0 to infanticide real quick here. It's sort of established that whatever this dramatic treatment that Hill went through to bring him back to life has also sort of robbed him of his sanity, and he gives this sort of grand speech, as you mentioned, about how that the Hill's ancestors were part of this Court of Owls, and how they had ruled Gotham from secret for years, and that this is sort of the Hill family's birthright to take back control using the technology that the Court of Owls gave them, and Junior is not having it, and it's interesting to sort of see, because again we sort of see this very personal family squabble mixed in with this sort of ridiculous, over the top we're talking about immortality and zombies and secret societies, and at the same time Jordan's mentioning how even though with as over the top as this is, that it's just sort of this another exclusive fraternity, another club, another political affiliation that his father cares more about than his own family, and is sort of very disrespectful to it, and his father is ready to kill Jordan if he does not turn over the money that he has apparently embezzled from his father, as he says the court needs that money to rebuild. But before we can get Jordan's full answer there, we have Batman and Deadman entering the scene, and Deadman quickly possesses Jordan, and then we have Batman and Deadman going to battle with the Court of Owls and their zombie army. But thankfully Batman was a little bit more prepared to deal with the Talons this time.
Yeah, I will correct you. It's not Jordan, it's Hamilton Hill Jr., but it's the other child of his that is dealing with male pattern baldness that is teaming with Batman. But we do get some interesting action that happens then. And it looks like Batman, one of his favorite tropes, and certainly one that would continue both in Batman Beyond, amongst other places, and the new Batman Adventures, goes back to the well one more time and grabs Mr. Freeze's freeze gun, because they figure out that might be a way to stop the Talons in their tracks, and stop them where they stand, so to speak. So he immediately begins using that and freezing the majority of the army. The Talon that we were introduced to in the first issue, however, is able to grab and come into possession of the freeze gun and destroys it, goes to destroy it. However, as he breaks it, the freeze gun begins to freeze his arm and head in the process. So he drops to the ground and is overtaken. So Batman and Deadman pretty much do away with this zombie army pretty quickly. At which point, Batman turns to address Mayor Hill, Hamilton Hill Sr. at that point, and Batman says it's time to give up. And Hamilton Hill has no interest in going to Arkham, where he says the rest of the damaged souls that Batman has stashed remain. And he says if he can't have this new life, he prefers none at all, and begins to destroy the old city hall lair and begins crashing down around them as Batman and the possessed body of Hamilton Hill Jr. escape. Which leads us to the sort of final scene that we have here of Batman and Deadman sort of watching the aftermath of the building turn down as they sort of observe Hamilton Hill Jr. Being helped by the paramedics.
Yeah, we get kind of a nice little send off and a cap to that earlier scene that we mentioned of Deadman and Batman sort of not knowing exactly when they've done enough good and Batman and as Batman and Deadman are sort of discussing that Jordan did not tell the authorities that his father was alive or had become the leader of the secret society, and they sort of talk about how it's clear because if he spoke about that publicly, that would hurt his own chances, his own family's good name, as well as his own political chances. So, Deadman mentions that it feels like Batman doesn't necessarily have a high opinion of a lot of people, despite dedicating his life to saving them. And Batman sort of gives a nice message there of whether or not he has a high opinion of everyone or not. He has sort of gained a higher opinion of Deadman through this adventure, and tells him that perhaps he's one step closer to the side of the angels. And Deadman tells him that while that might be true, he's going to stick around a little bit longer just in case. And we get kind of that nice little send off, and the two characters go their separate ways.
Yeah. So I guess we can talk overall here. As I mentioned, as the lead in sort of here, we had discussed on the last episode, sort of hoping that the Court of Owls story would be dragged out a little bit. We also speculated on who the possible leaders or members of the court could be. Now, we really only saw one member of the Court of Owls, and one would assume that there might be additional members if this is following suit similar to the original story and the standard continuity. So that's not to say we won't see more of the court throughout the remaining issues of this second series of Batman the Adventures Continue. But I have to say, story-wise, I was a little bit let down because there does seem to be such a quick resolution to this. We do get to see some great team ups between Batman and Deadman. I love that. I love the dialogue that sort of breaks up the action beats, both in the middle and the end. I gotta say though, I love that they didn't go with the obvious two choices, that being Hamilton Hill Jr. or Mayor Hill's wife as being the culprit behind it. But I'm really not feeling Hamilton Hill Sr. as a heel.
Yeah, crossover there. That's I think that's a fair assessment. We were sort of talking about different possibilities it could be, and that one didn't necessarily come up, and that's sort of a thing. And this is a personal taste thing. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, but generally, if there's a mystery afoot and we're going to do a big reveal, I would like there to be like a little bit of a hint where, hey, I can go back and read the first issue and see how they were setting this up. But we literally see Mayor Hill's dead body. So it's not as if, and they do have an explanation for that he sort of went through this same reanimation process that all the zombies are going through, yet, his was somehow more refined. So not only did it bring him back to life, but it gave him sort of more strength and all of his wits about him. So that they do try to sort of answer that critique, I guess, or question. But yeah, as it stands, it was just like, okay, it was the guy who died last issue, he wasn't really dead. It's not a mystery, I guess. It's a twist, which is okay. It's like I said, it's just a personal preference for me here. But yeah, I having that be the end to Mayor Hill's story, it was a little bit jarring. And again, we don't see a body there at the end. We don't know for sure that Mayor Hill is gone this time, or that the Court of Owls won't return later in this season, or perhaps in a future season if we're fortunate enough to get more. But yeah, as it stands, like I think we both said, we were hoping for this sort of be a long drawn out thing. I think when you introduce characters like this, who are you establish this sort of long stretching secret society that have had a hand in every political movement and then big important moment in the history of Gotham City, to have them sort of Batman fights them in a warehouse and then they blow up is a little bit anticlimactic, I think. And like I said, we're still in the wait and see camp here, because we don't necessarily know what the rest of this series will hold. We have a synopsis for the next couple of issues, but we don't necessarily know if there's a further overarching plot that will be continued for the rest of the season, or if we're just getting standalone issues. But yeah, as it stands, I thought it was really great that first issue set up a lot of really interesting questions, and again, to their credit, they do try to answer most of them here, but it just felt very abrupt there to just go, okay, it's Mayor Hill, and he's part zombie now, and now he's an immortal and now he's an immortal bad guy. It was a little much for one issue, and again, maybe if played out over a few more issues, it would have felt less jarring. But yeah, I'm kind of with you there on that front.
Yeah, just slightly disappointing. And, it's hard when you set your own expectations for things. And, I guess the same argument could be made if you look at the way that Bane was introduced to Batman, the animated series. There is a bit of a precedent here. If you recall, obviously Bane was the biggest villain of the early 90s and was introduced over a period of time of multiple, probably at least a year and a half's worth of issues and across the standard continuity of DC. And he was a one and done almost character in his original appearance. And then it was just kind of an everyday thug in the rest of the series in the new Batman adventures. So I guess there is technically a precedent here for, introducing these characters and maybe not having them be as impactful or as important as they were, and having sort of a muted or a less than drawn out storyline. So the argument, I guess, could be made in that way, but it can't help but say, like, man, just wish this went a little bit differently. If I had my hands on the controls, maybe it would be just slightly different how this went. But again, at least they did something different. They didn't go with the obvious. We were right that it was a red herring to have Hamilton Hill Jr. Be the member of the court, but I don't think I'd be hard pressed to find anybody that thought it was going to be reanimated Mayor Hill as the big reveal. Interestingly enough, so if you're worried about canonization, and certainly not talking about making Mayor Hill a saint, but it does, where this fits in DCAU canon, some of you might be wondering, well, if Hamilton Hill was a known criminal or turned into a criminal at some point, why on earth would they name Terry McGinnis's high school after a super criminal that animated a bunch of undead humanoids as an army to attack the city at some point? Well, the answer is sort of explained away, I think, in that final panel and the conversation between Deadman and Batman. I don't know that it was intentional, Liam, but they sort of explain it away.
Yeah, they like we mentioned there's some dialogue about how Junior doesn't tell the police that his father was responsible, and simply tells them that Batman saved him from the man who killed his father, and that because of his political aspirations, he is not willing to sort of come forward and be honest about the true identity of the leader of the Court of Owls here. But so yeah, you can say that. I mean, on the not to get too real here, but there are still schools named after like Confederate generals too. So like, it's not as if being a bad person means you can't have something named after you.
Solid and real life point there. Yes, this is equally true here. And who knows, as we said, maybe there's some redemption of Mayor Hill that we are yet to see. Stranger things could happen, but I guess we'll just have to file that one under "we'll see." So as we continue here, Liam, now that we've covered the entire plot of this issue, I guess it's time to talk about our highlight, seemingly each and every time we review one of these Batman The Adventures Continue issues. And that, of course, is the interior artwork with some beautiful pencils. And I believe I didn't see an inker credited for this. Was there? I believe Mr. Templeton may have also done his own inks.
Yeah, I think that generally means when they're credited as just artist, I usually take that to mean that it is pencils and inks. So yeah, we have Ty Templeton credited as the artist, and of course, best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, as the colorist.
That's right, and shout out to Monica for the intro again, if we haven't thanked her for that. But
thank you.
Big fan of that intro for this week's episode. But so I think we do a really great job of just saying how great the artwork is each and every time we review one of these. So overall, I would say that would I would agree with that and continue with some amazing artwork here. So why don't we highlight a few of our favorite panels if you have any at the ready, Liam?
Yeah, I think that first sequence in the Batcave, and this maybe crosses more into plot, and maybe not always getting what you want based on what you see on the cover. There are two great covers here, by the way. We will mention there. Chris Anka did the main cover, and Max Dunbar and Luis Guerrero did the variant. But the cover for this issue, not only did it have Zatanna, who does not appear in this issue, but it also had Nightwing and the Talon in battle against each other, which maybe would have been something cool to see. But we do get a little bit more Nightwing in this issue, along with Robin, although just in sort of a minor cameo role here. But the first sequence that really stands out in the issue as a whole to me is the bit where Alfred is possessed by Deadman. That's a pretty fun little couple of pages there.
Yeah, from doing single handstands and acrobatic work to doing, a front handstand and a front flip. Lots of fun and things that you wouldn't otherwise expect a 65-year-old plus butler to be doing. But Deadman remarks that he's quite spry for his age. So I guess Alfred's been working out, and those spa days he's been having with Maggie are really paying off.
$1 in the jar. But,
yeah. But I think what stood out for me for this one is there are several panels that Mr. Templeton did some great close-up shots of people's faces and reactions. There's a shot of Alfred as he's sort of handing Bruce his suit. That's sort of a close-up expressive face. There's lots of Deadman expressive faces as he both comes into contact with this mysterious leader of the court, and then also later on as in their final battle, there's some great expressive close-ups of Hamilton Hill Jr. We get to see him looking even more like his dad, I think, in this or the character model for his dad in this week's issue or this month's issue. Some more great close-ups of Batman, certainly, and expressive faces throughout as he and Deadman do their research. But I think that final scene, and we'll talk about the colors separately, but I think the final scene, the fire and the expressive face of the reveal of Hamilton Hill as the leader of this Court of Owls, and then Hamilton Hill Jr.'s face equally shocked and startled and surprised. A great marriage of the colors and the expression, though, that Mr. Templeton gave to Hamilton Hill Jr. really comes across in his artwork there. And there's a follow-up panel later on where he's still sort of shocked over his father's decision to do what he's done. So lots of expressive facial up close shots in this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole reveal section there, that whole final sequence in the last few pages set in this sort of this throne room in this abandoned city hall building. It's very interestingly lit. It's sort of all lit by we see these big torches and so we get some really nice shadow work done there, as well as some really brilliant colors, a lot of oranges and and yellows and things like that from Monica, doing a really good job. It's a very dramatic sequence, as you mentioned, from all of these dramatic close-ups as Jordan, or excuse me, as Junior is reacting to his father's decision, and then sort of as Batman enters the fray as well, and we sort of get sort of looks at all of the zombie talons sort of pouring in from these openings in the wall and in the floor, and just sort of this horde coming from everywhere, and then sort of this dramatic reveal of Batman pulling the freeze gun out of his belt, and then beginning to fire it at all of the talons. That's a really fun sequence, and a good juxtaposition there as we go from a lot of like bright oranges and yellows and reds there into the sort of the cool blue of it all as that sequence begins. And sort of a great shot there as the Talon breaks the freeze gun, which of course causes him to sort of freeze himself, and then Batman sort of surrounded in the cape still with this amulet on his forehead, and some really good stuff there. And then the final escape there as Batman and Junior with Deadman sort of still inhabiting Junior's body, sort of just managing to escape as the building comes down around them. And then just the very final panel there, as we see Batman sort of begin to swing away and Deadman flying away, and we sort of pull back and we see the bright red sky of Gotham and the full moon, and we notice that the gargoyle that Batman was standing on was in fact an owl. A nice little bit of symmetry there. So yeah, I like that final page as Batman and Deadman say their goodbyes as well.
Yeah, the artwork, the pencils, and the inking that Mr. Templeton did, fantastic. Monica, I think, killed it again this week. I think the first thing that stood out to me was the first scene that we get right after we cut from Alfred and Deadman. We cut to the Talon having this interaction with the mysterious leader of the Court of Owls, and he goes inside this building, and they're in there, and you see all these tables spread out as with all of these zombie Talons ready to have this formula injected in them. And Monica actually, like, you can see the windows in this place, and she chose to use the reddish hue of the night sky to light up the windows that are in this room. And it's so great because the floor is like this bluish gray color. You have the gray death of the zombies, and the deep dark blacks of the Talon, and then the windows are these just like blood colored red, almost symbolizing like the blood that's going to, the life that's going to be injected into these zombies upcoming. And I think later on, the scene in the actual church also, she did a great job coloring the stained glass and the interaction that Deadman has with this mysterious owl creature. The explosion that comes out of this church steeple and the coloring of the stained glass is just really, really great. Another great mix of blues and oranges and reds and purples in that whole scene. And then again, like you said, I think one of the things that we love and that really that Monica excels at is giving that hue that comes from a burning fire. We talked about that last season in the first in some of those issues, and how that fire burning, you can just kind of hear the crackle of the flame just based on the way that the coloring is happening in that in those panels. And that and then once Batman breaks out the freeze gun and the color starts to sort of fade to that darker bluish hue, symbolizing the heat is kind of going out of the room, and Batman is coming in, and this sort of the villain is sort of being overtaken in the ceremony that went from the sort of initiation ceremony that he was going to initiate a Junior with to sort of Batman ruining the plans and cooling things down literally, and then wrapping things up with Deadman across the blood red night sky of Gotham, and him and Batman having this conversation. Really, really great. We continue to heap lots of praise on the artist for this comic book for great reason. It's going to be hard, certainly, and no one's going to be able to fill the shoes as we continue on this series, perhaps without Mr. Templeton. being unable to continue for right now. So it'll be interesting to see, how we react going forward and who they end up getting, because it's going to be hard because Mr. Templeton and Monica have been such a great dynamic duo paired with getting this artwork out, over the last, however many issues we've covered of this, that just make these so memorable and so great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's they're a heck of a tandem there. Just little things in Ty's art that are then sort of enhanced by Monica's coloring. But that the shot in the church as Deadman and the leader of the court have sort of come face to face, and when we see sort of the talons descending from the roof of the church down towards Deadman with the stained glass window as sort of the background there, it's really tremendous. And then sort of as Deadman's being attacked and his ghostly form begins to dissipate, he actually kind of begins to take a little bit closer of a look of his traditional comics look, which is a lot more sort of skinny and sickly and sort of with longer arms and legs a little bit and a neck there. So sort of as he's sort of being damaged by these undead creatures, his form begins to change as well, which I thought was a really nice little wrinkle there that they added in. And you sort of see like smoke and stuff coming off of his body as he's going there. Just a really tremendous sequence there as the zombies begin to attack. And even that shot, as we mentioned, after Jordan and his mother have this argument over the money, just that sort of, as you mentioned, the cliffhanger shot of Jordan sitting in his office and sort of just beginning to look behind him, and this haunting figure of this zombie Talon behind him, with the arms up, ready to sort of strike, with the looming shadow behind him. It's really, really tremendous stuff. Just a lot of really striking moments of in this issue from our pair of artists there with of Monica and Ty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would advise checking out Monica's Twitter at monica.kubina. She actually posted earlier this week a shot, a blink and you miss it cameo appearance by a different showcase of collection of different costumes or suits, if you will, and featuring a sort of nod to various Mr. Freeze costumes and Firefly, and it's her process throughout deciding how to color and shade it. She talks a little bit about that in the post, so I would advise you go check that out. Give her a follow if you don't already follow her at monica.kubina. That's Kubina with a K, Kubina. Definitely give her a follow and give her some love on her posts. It's cool also because a lot of times she'll post the raw artwork, which is a little bit more vibrant than what we end up sometimes getting in hand. So check that out for sure. But we do get a sneak peek, which we kind of already knew based on the covers and some of the solicits, Liam, for next month's issue, and that is going to be the return of the Jazzman. If you don't remember the Jazzman, he played a pivotal role in one single episode of Batman the Animated Series. And so it'll be interesting to see if this is going to be another one of those, hey, remember this guy, or if it's if there's going to be an actual sort of meaningful link to having the Jazzman return for next month's episode, or next month's issue. But I believe we also may indeed have the Huntress as well in next month's issue as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting thing. Obviously, it appears based on all we've seen so far as the cover of that issue, but looks to be in her JLU garb. So whether or not this is the sort of first introduction to this character in theoretical DCAU timeline, she's sort of already an established vigilante when we meet her in Justice League, certainly. So whether or not this could be part of her a new version of her origin story, we don't quite know why she is after the Jazzman, but of course we know why this issue will seemingly focus a lot more on Batgirl and Barbara Gordon, which of course the Jazzman nearly kills Jim Gordon in that episode I Am the Night, and and with him on the loose, that's a very important episode. And as we talked about when we reviewed that episode, which of course you can hear in the archives at DCAUreview.com, that sort of has some really cool foreshadowing. That's pre her donning the Batgirl suit for the first time, but there's a lot of moments in that episode where she sort of talks about, the feeling of helplessness that she has not being able to go out there and sort of catch this guy that's threatened her father the way he has. So this could be a really fun and interesting follow-up to what was sort of the beginnings of this DCAU version of Barbara Gordon and Batgirl.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be interested to see what that story looks like. And you can definitely hear that episode on the same podcast feed. As we mentioned at the top of the show, if you haven't already, we invite you to go back and listen to our coverage of the Justice League Infinity comic that was also released this week. Liam and I will be working overtime pretty much every first week of the month for the next several months here, getting some content out, talking about these comics. We are certainly excited to do so, to give our thoughts and opinions on both the plot that's happening in the storyline that's happening in the books, as well as the artwork. So we look forward to talking about that. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media at DCAU Review, both on Twitter and Instagram. Give us your feedback. Let us know what your thoughts are if you've read this issue with the reveal of Hamilton Hill as the leader of the Court of Owls. Do you feel like this episode or this storyline will be picked up again later on during this second season of Batman: The Adventures Continue, or do you feel like we're going to move on at this point? Tweet Liam at DCAU Review and give us your thoughts on what you think. And then don't forget, of course, to tune in on our standard feed for more DCAU episodes where we review each and every week. We review an episode of a DCAU animated show. We're reviewing Superman this month, so check that out as we review some of the Man of Steel's past adventures. But Liam, looking forward to covering more stuff throughout the summer here and into the fall and perhaps even the winter, as we have plenty of DCAU stuff to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely always love hearing from the listeners and our friends on Twitter and Instagram. So definitely hit us up. Let us know what you think. And we're looking forward to even more great DCAU content in the weeks and months to come.
That's right. Don't forget, if you can also support the artists, support the creators, go out and buy either the digital copy or kill two birds with one stone, support your local comic shop and the creators by buying the physical copy of one of these amazing issues. And let the good folks at DC know that you want more Batman: The Adventures Continue and Justice League Infinity content. Until next time, though, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
We will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.